welcome everyone. Welcome again. My name is Eveline Persoon. I work for EdLab, the University Center for Teaching and Learning here in Maastricht. Together with Donna Carroll, Dominique Meijers, we formed a team for professional development and teaching and learning. And with the topic of universal design for learning being so prominent currently in our professional development offer, we wanted to have a firm base on what it is, what the main principles are, being explained by someone who is an expert on the topic. And then we found Eunice via the internet. I went on a search on information on UDL, came across a podcast with Eunice, and it inspired me so much that I decided to reach out, and there you go, Eunice responded. So I was super happy about that. So thank you for being here, Eunice. You will introduce yourself further a little bit as well on who you are and your background and your university, obviously. And we just wanted to say, great that you're here. Thank you for being here. And let's get this party started, I want to say. So
Absolutely.
over to you, Eunice.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's been really fun. Good evening and good morning for me. It's 9 a.m. for me here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And, you know, Evelyn, thank you for your warm welcome and great collaboration on this project. And welcome everyone again so this is an introduction to Universal Design for Learning, as Evelyn mentioned. So this 90-minute section would provide an overview of Universal Design for Learning from theory to practice. So we want to look at what the theory is in terms of what a principle is. How do we apply that in our teaching and learning? And also would also have an opportunity to reflect on some of the things in terms of action planning. So during the session, we would introduce the three core principles. So about 30 minutes will be assigned for each principle. We'll begin with multiple means of representation, exploring ways to present information to meet the diverse needs of students, followed by a short action planning segment to help you to kind of reflect and apply some of the ideas. Next, we'll cover multiple means of action and expression, which is on the student side, right? Discussing how to support students in demonstrating their knowledge using various methods. And then finally, we'll talk about multiple means of engagement. So I look forward to a really great time of engagement and discussion. So like Evelyn mentioned already, please use the chat, please unmute, use the reaction tool, you know, however, we are talking about universal design for learning. So we are trying to model and make sure that everyone is, you know, fully engaged in the teaching and learning process. All right, let's get started and share. No, it's not what I wanted to start with. Okay. All right, so a little bit about me. So my name is Eunice Ofori, as mentioned already. I have a PhD in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis on instructional design and technology from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University here in the US. So currently I'm the Associate Director for Instructional Design for the Center for Engaged Learning and Teaching at Tulane University in New Orleans. Part of what I also do is that I coordinate the special education specialty with the School of Professional Advancement. And my goal is to provide equal access to education for all by supporting academic communities to create and develop innovative research-based teaching and learning experiences. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm gonna have you all share a little bit about you as well. In the chat, please write your name. Let me make sure I'm getting my prompt. Your name and maybe department of affiliation. What's your favorite fall activity? And then maybe what is your goal for joining the academy? So I'm trying to kind of cut corners here. So I'm going to give you maybe 2 to 3 minutes to share your name, department of affiliation. What is your favorite fall activity, and what is your goal for joining the academy? Or if there's one question you like answered by the end of the academy, please share that, and we will revisit that at the end to make sure that your questions are answered. But thank you again. So I'm going to hang on for just 2 to 3 minutes and have you do that. I had polling setup and all that, but it takes a minute. So we'll get to the polling in just a little bit.
Eunice, just very quickly for me, with academy, you mean this session, right? So this training.
Yes, this training.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
You know why I said academy? Because I referred to UDL Academy. That's kind of how
Exactly.
we call it. So I created a UDL Academy when I started at Tulane. It didn't exist. So I always call it UDL Academy.
Yeah, nice.
But yes, this workshop. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to do that. And as you're doing that, I'm going to put in the chat some workshop materials. Let me put that in the chat. So a couple of materials. So I have the PowerPoint is also there as well. I do have a QR code that I'm going to share with you. And thank you. I can see all that information pouring in. Thank you for sharing. Let me share. So also with the workshop resources, I have a QR code if you would like to access on your phone to see some of the materials we have. I have a folder that has all the resources in it. So when you scan this QR code, you will be able to see it. There is also these individual files. So within that folder, there are 4 files within the folder, and I have a QR code for each of them if you want to be able to engage in that way. I think the folder is easier because once you get into the folder, you are able to see all the different files. They are also the same files that I shared in the chat. So the whole point of doing this is that we want to create an environment where you can easily access instructional material in a way that you will be able to engage effectively with it.
We will also download everything and then send it around in the email. So thank you for that, Eunice. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me see. Let's see what we have in the chat. Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay. Favorite hobby. I love the favorite hobby, teaching. I love teaching, by the way. So I'm originally from Ghana, is what I didn't mention. So that's where my accent comes from. So we moved here a couple years ago. So I love everything about teaching. Walking in the sunny autumn together with my little son. Oh, how sweet, Nicole. I have 3 boys also. So I'll talk about some of them and how different they are and how UDL plays into how diverse we are. Thank you all for sharing. So I'm going to get back to these goals and these questions you have at the end to make sure that learn how to apply the principles. Okay, so I'll look through some of them and make sure that your questions are answered. Please put your questions in the chat as we keep going so that we can make sure that we've answered the questions for you. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to, answer any questions on any follow-up email. I'll share my email. My email is in the PowerPoint, but I'll share my information as well if you have further questions about the session today. All right, so let's dig in. So to kind of get started, we want to kind of talk about what universal design for learning, where it started, what the background is, where it came from. So universal design, so it started off as universal design without the learning. And this started with someone called Ronald Mays, who is an architect and a pioneer of universal design. So he was profoundly impacted by accessibility for all because when he was born, he contracted polio at age 9 and used a wheelchair, which exposed him to daily accessibility barriers. So the concept of accessibility, or the concept of universal design started off with him thinking about architecture, thinking about building and access to particular building spaces. So despite his challenges, he pursued a degree in architecture at North Carolina State University. And then after initially designing the traditional building, shifted his focus to making spaces accessible to everyone, regardless of mobility, regardless of your ability. So Mace's concept of universal design aimed to create products and environments that are usable for all. Coining terms like inclusive design, barrier-free design. His advocacy led to the development of America's first accessible building code, influencing the federal accessibility legislation, including the Americans with Disability Act. So his legacy lives on through his founding of the Center for Universal Design at North Carolina University. So that the Center for Universal Design at North Carolina State University shifted this focus from architecture, applied this architecture idea into learning. So when you talk about universal design for learning, it was developed by the Center for Applied Special Technology, which is called CAST, which was founded by David Rose and Ann Meyer in 1980s, and they adapted the principle of universal design to educational context. So that's a little bit of history and background of what universal design for learning and where it came from. So for our discussion, I think we've kind of talked about it. We do a little bit of introduction. We'll look at the principles, the application to the principles, and then we'll hopefully have some time to do action planning. So I'll be watching my clock as we keep going. All right, so here's our learning outcomes. We would explore the principles, how to apply it in syllabus and course design, and then we would reflect and develop a personalized action plan. But I would say that the action plan would be more of something that you will go with as you keep reflecting on it, because we might not be able to fully complete that. I'm gonna skip this activity for now. We'll revisit it at the end. So here's a concept. So when you look at this picture on this screen, you see that there are ramps and there are stairs, right? So like I mentioned before, universal design was rooted in the theory from architecture. So like looking at this, if you are trying to move from the bottom of this stairs to the top, do you think that having a wheelchair and not having a wheelchair, you will be able to have access to the building at the top? Do you is it yes or no? You can put it in the chat or on mute and share. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Yeah, there is. Yes, yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, so in terms of human-centered design, accessibility is inherent in the design, not an afterthought. So when you want to think about accessibility, you want to think about having access to instructional content, having access to a building, you would see that you have to think about it from the beginning. Otherwise, it would be an afterthought. And then if it's an afterthought, then it's not really accessible. You did not really think about it from the beginning. So because there is no barriers of the design, there is no accommodation needed, right? You don't need to have an elevator. You could have an elevator, which would also be useful, right? But I like using elevators, even though I don't have a wheelchair, right? So then that leads us to this section here in looking at when you go to a grocery store and there is like sliding doors. It's great if you have a wheelchair, right? You are able to access and go in and out. But if you have a stroller, right? You see the picture at the bottom, and you see that the first picture has someone in a wheelchair using a curb cart, right? And it's able to tell them where they are, and it's able to, protect them, protect the wheelchair from kind of wheeling off or something like that. But also someone in a wheelchair, in the stroller, would also benefit from using the curb cut. So all this to say is that thinking about accessibility in mind, starting off with accessibility in the design benefits everyone. So the whole concept of universal design is not one size fits all, right? If you design with everybody in mind, everyone else everyone else benefits from that. So it's not only people who are using wheelchair that needs the sliding doors. I use it all the time when I have so many grocery bags in my hand, or I don't want to touch the door or something like that. So it benefits you whether you have a disability or not. So just think about this scenario where you have about 30 students in the class. 6 of them have accommodation. I don't know how it fully works in Netherlands, but here in the United States, in higher education, we have the Department for Student Accessibility. So sometimes some of the students will have extra time. Some of the students would have maybe double time or no taking accommodation based on different challenges they have, right? So in a class of currently I'm teaching a class of 26. Out of the 26, I think about 5 of the students have accommodation. So if we have a test, we give them extra time. So then, so you think about that, there are 6 students with accommodation. So what about the other 24 students, right? Some of the other students could be English language learners. They could be experiencing high level of anxiety. They could have crisis. They have low motivation. They could be highly skilled in a particular subject area and want to have that engagement or want to have that that level of skill they are looking for, right? One of the things that you can see in this presentation is that I have live captions turned at the bottom of my screen. Live captions are available in Office 365. It has been available for a couple of years now. When I came from Ghana to the US, my feeling was that American English was a little bit different. I was used to British English in Ghana because Ghana was colonized by the British. So my saving grace was live captions, right? So even though I didn't have any disability, these captions were a lifesaver, huge lifesaver for me, right? So you want to think through all of your students in general, right? Because we know that higher education is getting very diverse in terms of who can engage with the content or who is even present in the classroom. So you think about universal design for learning as a framework for guiding educational practice, right? So, some of the things that universal design for learning would do is it would remove barriers, right? It would help students to overcome barriers. It would optimize the level of challenge and that all learners have something to bring to the table. All learners are valuable and they are able to engage in the teaching and learning process. Any questions so far before we move on? All right, let's keep going. All right, so other things to also consider in terms of why UDL is that it's a culturally inclusive framework. It helps to think about not just your own culture or your own biases, but other students as well. Everyone benefits. It values the plans for diversity and inclusion in the classroom. It enables equity in the classroom as well. So there's a few common misconceptions that, oh no, it's only for technology, it's only for students with disabilities, it's only for certain type of teachers or type of subject areas or small groups or something like that, specific subject area. So then, from the discussion we've had, you can see that it's not only for people with disabilities, it's not only for particular student group of students, it's for all students and all faculty. You can be able to fully engage your students this way. All right, so in terms of the UDL, Universal Design for Learning, there are 3 main principles. We have multiple means of engagement, which is the why of learning, multiple means of representation, and then multiple means, which is the what of learning, and the multiple means of action and expression, which is the how of learning. So these principles do not have to go in a particular order, but I like to start off with representation. So multiple means of representation would be the first one we'll look at. And the reason is that multiple means of representation is instructor-centered, right? So it starts off with how you are going to represent or present your content to your students, right? So you giving students various ways or multiple ways that learning can, or they can accept or they can receive the course information, right? So that is why I begin with multiple means of representation, but it doesn't have to be in that particular order. I just feel like I start from the instructor move on to the student, and then move on to engagement. That makes a lot of sense in terms of flow and the way that I really perceive what universal design for learning should start. It always starts with the instructor. So learning can take place, that the student has his or her role to play, but absolutely starts with your planning and thinking through what you want to do. So multiple means of representation comes with three main principles. The first one is perception. Support the opportunities to customize and display the information, right? Looking at your text size, your contrast. So if you are creating a PowerPoint, you want to be mindful of your text, the type of text you are using, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. You want to support multiple ways to perceive the information, right? So having, a transcript or closed captions or live captions, in addition to other things, having alternative text. Now, when we talk about alternative text, I'm going to ask you if you know what alternative text in just a minute. If you can put that in the chat, I'll take a look at that. Represent diversity of perspective and identities, right? So knowing who your students are, recognizing the range of people and culture and history. I'm very passionate about UDL because that has made me and formed me into who I am today, coming from a completely different country and studying in the United States. I think culturally responsive teaching played a bigger role because I was more inclined to connect with what I already knew, not what I don't know, right? So I start off with what I already know. So you want to think about multiple different range of cultures and incorporate that in the teaching process. So 2, language and symbol. So we talked about perception. So language and symbol, I'm going to just bring all of that out. There's a lot of information, so you might want to you probably go back and kind of take a look at that. But clarifying some vocabulary, providing some sort of like scaffolding support or job aid or resources for your students will be really useful for them. And so part of this workshop, one of the materials is like it's like an analysis, like an example of some of the things you can include. And then 3, building knowledge. So building knowledge really focuses on how to connect prior knowledge to new learning, right? Because the students did not come as like a black box with nothing in there. They came with something, right? How do you build upon what they already know, right? Cultivating multiple different ways of knowing and making meaning to what you want your students to do. So that's building knowledge. So now, just to kind of summarize multiple means of representation, you want to be intentional about the perception, how students perceive the information, looking at different modes of learning. So I mentioned that I had 3 boys. I can tell them a story all day, but one of them would never be able to get the story unless I write a story in a bulleted form, because he's a very visual learner, so he has to be able to see that. So when you are also teaching, you want to use text, you want to use video, you want to use audio, because students have different preferences of how they want to engage with the instructional content. Support language and symbol. Support multiple different cultural background and diverse ways that you can incorporate different diverse culture into the classroom. And then you want to build knowledge, connect the new information to prior knowledge and build on that. So you start from a least complex model and then move your way up to a much more complex level. All right, so here's a quick video here. Let me see. In
terms of multiple means of representation, for example, so I have pre-class activities. Pretty much all professors have that. In a lot of traditional environments, that means read the textbook, right? Well, for me, what I do is I do pre-class menus. So each kind of mini unit within the bigger units are accompanied by a set of questions that by the time you're done with this little mini unit, you should know the answers to these 4 things, and it's different for every unit. And then I give them a menu of ways that they can learn that information. So on the menu is the textbook pages that cover that content. There's also, if I can find it or if I've created it, a video of either me or an expert talking about the exact thing that relates back to those 4 questions that they need to know the answer to. There's also a web guide or a web quest where they can click through a whole bunch of different websites that if they look at them, they can also get the answer to those questions. And sometimes, if it's appropriate, some like original sources. So higher level stuff, the original research that these principles that we're learning about came from. And then I just say to them, the students, consult as few or as many of the things on the menu as you want to or need to, such that you feel like you know the answers to these questions.
That's awesome. Any reaction to this? So that's a really good segue to the next. Any reactions to what example she provided in the video?
I think it looks a lot like, oh, sorry. What we do here at Maastricht University is the problem-based learning. So where the students create their own learning goals. And I think it's really nice to see that this is sort of a way where the instructor gives these learning goals, but our students then come up with them themselves. But I mean, me as a coordinator, I do give the literature to the students. So in that way, we have to have that good alignment. And yeah, it sounds like I could be a bit more diverse in those sources, because now it's a lot of reading, where it could be that maybe multiple different sources could lead to the same solution for one of their own learning goals. So in that sense, yeah, it definitely rings a bell for me personally. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other perspective?
Oh, maybe you don't see me, but maybe you can hear me.
Yes.
This principle really resonated with me because I think 3 weeks ago I have to host a Zoom meeting, and one of the students had hearing disabilities, and she was using a device. And of course, it was creating a lot of static. And if I've only had the eyes a little bit more open back then, I would be able just to put the live captions and have this in mind. So yeah, now it's very useful. I was thinking, oh, this would have been great like 3 weeks ago, but I think for the future, this is already like a very relevant input.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So just a segue. So in terms of the application, let me just share my screen really quickly. The time is moving really fast. All right. So in terms of application, I might probably jump through some of them. So you want to make sure that you are using a mix of videos, audio, recording, text, images, and different things that you can do. I think I asked about alternative text. Any ideas what alternative text is? Or alt text. Have you heard alt text before? Okay. So when we talk about alt text, any non-text item, text to explain a picture. Excellent. Thank you. Is it secret? Captions under a picture. Yes, excellent. Thank you. So you guys are awesome. I know it's there. Just have to pull it. So any non-text item. So I forgot her name. Well, someone just contributed right now. She mentioned about needing this 3 weeks ago. So you don't want to think about, for example, one time I was teaching a class, halfway through the class, one of the students said, I have, low vision. So the challenge with disability is that sometimes some of the students would not, they would not come out to tell you. So halfway through the class, she's like, oh, I have low vision in one eye. The other one is almost blind. I had no idea. There was no accommodation at all. So you want to think about all those things before you get started. Now, back to alternative text. Any non-text item, if someone who has a screen reader is engaging with the content, it would not be able to tell them what it is. It would just say image off, right? So you want to provide a description. Now, the most important thing about alternative text is that you want to think about the fact that, is that image you are providing, is it contributing to the meaning of this particular content? So then when you close your eyes, let's say you are blind or you have low vision, how are you going to be able to explain that to instructor. I do a whole session on alternative text also, so we probably would not have a lot of time to dive into it. But definitely, providing alternate. So, and that is why it is important for you to think about accessibility from the beginning, right? Because if you have a whole list of PowerPoints and you haven't really done the alternative text, it becomes a chore to go back and now add it in. If it's decorative, you can just click that it is decorative. You don't have to really do anything else about that. But if that image, so for example, a graph, is definitely important, right? So sometimes with a graph, you have to have a long description and a link to where that information is. You never really know who is engaging with your content, especially if you are even teaching online, right? Even if it's in person, the student might not necessarily tell you that I have a disability. Here is it. Here's my accommodation. They might choose to not say anything about it. Any other questions? And then have you also heard sans serif and serif fonts before? Yes, I see a lot of no. Okay. Okay. Yes, thank you. Mark, can you give me an example of serif fonts? Now I'm going off of the PowerPoint.
I can't think of a serif font. Sans serif is like Arial and Calibri and some of the fairly common ones. And it affects the readability for some kinds of people. Like normally we should use sans serif fonts. And that's why some kind of websites, they have a very strict range of fonts that they use. It helps the accessibility.
Mark,
am I right?
You scored 100%. All right, so here are some examples of sans. So I used to use Times New Roman all the time. So Times New Roman is a serif font. It is not accessible. And the reason is that when you look at Times New Roman, the T on Times New Roman, for example, has extra inflections on it. If someone has dyslexia, they get confused with it. So I kind of have shifted my focus from using other types of font type to these type of font size. So Arial is one, Helvetica is one that is in an email, Calibri, Futera, Roboco, Lato, Montserrat. Anyway, so here, it's the way the text is written on the font itself, individual font itself. So to think about accessibility, you also want to make sure that you are using sans serif fonts in creating your content as well. Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So other things, I'm kind of rushing through it, but in terms of, you also want to think about readability in application to your syllabus. So in terms of your syllabus, 12 to 14 font size with a sans serif font is what is recommended. 1.5 line spacing is important. And then you also want to think about contrast, right? Let me share this with you. I use this contrast checker all the time because the challenge with creating the content is that you can create the content, but then if the students cannot access it or the contrast is not enough, then it becomes a challenge. I think the biggest thing is the university colors. Sometimes we try to use university colors and sometimes the contrast is not that great for anybody at all to look at. Like since wearing glasses, I see and perceive the world in a different way than when I don't need glasses because I want the font in a particular size and a good contrast so I can easily access it. So there's so many different strategies that you can use that I'm gonna leave with you, but I think we're gonna take a pause, go to a breakout room for 5 minutes. Let me share the resources again for benefit of those who were not able to join us at the beginning. So click on the action planning worksheet. So click on it, you'll be able to download it from the web, and then the action planning analysis. So that's like a scaffold or material that I'm providing for you to support it. What I want you to do is that reflect on some of the things that we are talking about today, right? Reflect on some of these things and then have your own action plan, right? For now, let's just think about multiple means of representation. Is there one or two strategy that you can think of implementing or incorporating into your teaching and learning. Any questions before we head on to the breakout room? And I think the chat will not be available in the breakout room. So please click on it so you can download it and have access to it before you head on to the breakout room. All right, so we do have 4 rooms. Let's do, I'm gonna give you 4 minutes to discuss. I know it's not enough. But I will see you in 4 minutes. I might probably hop into some of the breakout rooms and see what you guys are up to. But I know you're gonna do a great job. Thank you. All right, welcome back. So I'm gonna give you homework. Write down one strategy that you are excited based on the multiple means of representation discussion so far. I think we're going to move on to the next session, but write it down because I'm going to test you at the end. No, I'm not going to test you. But note that on your action planning document so that that action planning document is yours, even beyond the workshop, for you to kind of go through it and reflect on that. I would say that, and I would mention that at the end too, is that think about one. This whole time we are here, don't feel overwhelmed that I need to do all of these things. I need to incorporate all of these things. If you can even reflect on your teaching and your instructional strategies and just implement one, do reflection, and then implement as you go, it feels a little bit easier as you go. So that has always been my strategy. It's still a learning process as we go, but every semester I implement one thing, I add on as I go. So write it down. I'm going to ask you at the end. All right. So let's move on. Any questions before we move on to the next session? I want to make sure that everything is clear before we move on to the next session. I think Carl has a question. No, I'm picking on Carl.
I can't ask a question, of course, right? So, and how far did you use UDL in your slide deck today?
I did use UDL. What I did not do, what I didn't do was that usually when I'm preparing for a presentation, I add the alternative text to it. But let me show you something really quickly, what I did not do, what I intentionally didn't do, because sometimes I use that as an example. So in PowerPoints, that's also part of the accessibility component. I'm sure majority of you know this. When you are in PowerPoint and you click on view and review, you click on check accessibility, you can see right over here, right? Here are errors, missing all text, 100 alternative text. Because I did not do it, I want you to see that. So this is a PowerPoint I created with accessibility in mind, looking at the contrast and all that, but I did not add alternative text, and it gives you all of those errors here. So here you go. Carl, does that answer your question? Do you use the accessibility checker when you do finish your PowerPoint? Okay, so that is already
That's a good
built.
advice. Thank you. Yes, very good advice.
Yes, absolutely. So imagine me going back to add alternative text to 100 images, right? That feels like I don't want to do it, right? But if I did it from the beginning, then I don't even have to worry about it. I have to assess, is this image, does it need alternative text? This thing is going to go off because it's motion censored. Does it need a meaning? Does it create like this image I have on the screen? Does it improve the image on the slide? And definitely you want to make sure that when you have PowerPoint slides, you include text, images, and media. So you can see that with my PowerPoint, I have some video, I have some text, I have some images, because I'm trying to cater for different learning preferences. Research shows that there's no learning style, but there's learning preferences. So the 1-minute video could really summarize everything for you if you are someone who likes to learn with a video, right? So you want to think about all the different modalities of teaching and learning and incorporate some of that in your PowerPoint and in your, I can go on and on and on, Carl. Let's discuss multiple means of action and expression, which is our second principle. Where is it? Somewhere up here. Oh, that's the first one. Sorry. Okay, here we go. All right, so multiple means of action and expression. So you want to think about action and expression is more of what you want the students to be able to do, right? I think that the previous slide talks about it. So the student navigate the classroom and coursework in a little bit of a different way. So you want to provide and capitalize on the student's strengths, right? We call something the asset-based model. You want to capitalize on students' strengths and use that to their advantage to help them reach their goal. So you want to vary the the methods of response, right? If you give your students an assignment, is it possible for you to give them options to tell you they understand that? So the first one was talking about representation. You think about accessibility, you think about different ways that you can present the content to your student and thinking about all those strategies. Now, how do the student tell you they understand the content, right? The content or the concept you are teaching them. So honoring the different methods and giving student access to assistive technological tool. Can you put in the chat some examples of assistive technology tools that you are familiar with? I'm going to move on, but I'll revisit that in just a minute. So here's an example that I have here. So you cannot choose my example. You have to choose a different one. So you want to make sure that you are varying the interaction with the content. You are honoring the expression and communication, right? So you are using multiple media to express the content. So sometimes a representation comes into action and expression as well. So like, for example, discussion posts, if you have like small and large group discussion, you also want to do that. Use multiple tools for construction and composition. So you want to make sure that you are using multiple, like for example, if you have exam, right? One of my kids, the same kid that I'm talking to you about, is not a good test taker. So if he's in a class where they only write tests, then he would miss out. And then you are setting him up to fail, right? But he's really great at writing a paper. He's really great at, take-home quizzes. So you want to make sure that you are incorporating all of these different strategies and different ways that the students are engaging or asking them questions based on that. The next principle is the strategy and development, right? Set meaningful goals, right? It all starts off with a goal, right? Set meaningful goals and match your goals. So we're going to talk about alignment. I heard from Evelyn that you guys are amazing with Bloom's taxonomy and alignment. So we're going to talk about alignment in just a little bit. Organize information in a way that students will be able to memorize it. They are able to connect with the content well. That way they are able to engage with it. Analyze their growth over time and has the capacity for monitoring the progress. You want to monitor the student progress as you go. Now, let me also ask you another question. What are you familiar with formative and summative assessment? I know the answer would be yes. Let me stop sharing and see what we have in the chat. Awesome. So I see a lot of tools, Kahoot. I have never heard WooClap. That's great. I always learn new tools. In terms of technology too, there's always something new to learn. Voice note, screen recording technologies, natural. So for example, Tulane, we have Kurzweil 3000, which is the assistive technology tool, but a free tool such as Immersive Reader. Have you guys heard of Immersive Reader before? You have, okay. So you do know that it's also incorporated in Microsoft Office 365 tool, right? So Immersive Reader can be found in Microsoft tools. It's been incorporated into it. You could also have the Chrome extension of Immersive Reader if you want to read on the web. So you can look at the Chrome extension for Immersive Reader and include it. So there are free tools. You don't have to actually purchase a tool to use for that. Miro is also a really great tool in terms of engaging your students and helping them to understand the content. I did ask you a question about, what was the question I asked? Okay, so yes, I
I
asked
believe
about,
formative and summative assessment.
yes, thank you. Oh, who answered the question? Evelyn did. Okay, are you familiar with formative and summative assessment? Yes. Okay, I see a lot of nods. Can you give me one example of formative assessment?
Giving feedback to students on the draft of an assignment.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Mark is getting 100% today for sure. So yeah, so you want to think about both formative and summative assessment. So if you just have formative, like you have midterms and finals, it means that the students do not have any scaffold, they don't have opportunity to receive feedback, and then that would probably impact their grades or scores at the end of the semester. So you want to kind of scaffold that. So if they have a paper at the end, you want to give them the opportunity to maybe submit a draft, like Mark mentioned, and then use that opportunity to give them that feedback to help them to reach their goal. All right, let's continue on with our discussion. So that the last principle or the last strategy in multiple means of representation, why is this not? Okay. Computer is frozen. Okay. So this is just like a summary of all three. So the three principles is what I outlined here. This is just a little summary. So you want to vary the methods of response and navigation. You want to use multiple media for expression. So for example, if in my class, my 26 student class, students have reflection assignments each week. Unless they have like a major assignment, they have like a reflection and discussion assignment. I give them the opportunity to either write a paper, record a video, record an audio, or any other capacity, right? The most important thing about action and expression is that you start with the learning outcome or the learning goals, right? You are not watering down the content. You are providing opportunity for students to still reach the goal, by providing various ways that they can assess the content. They can tell you they understand the concept. Again, assistive technology comes in play here. You want to honor the modes of expression. So if you can, your learning goal is for the student to demonstrate a particular skill, then you want to give them the opportunity to do that, maybe in a video or audio format. Here's a quick video also, like a summary, and then we get great.
Feature of team-based learning that I really like is called the readiness assurance process. So students are supposed to become already familiar with the content. And the first thing that we do in class, okay, they take an individual quiz, very simple, only on basic concepts. It's a multiple choice quiz, and they get to answer those questions using clickers. And then they assemble into their teams, and the teams range from 6 to 8 students. They get to do the same quiz, answer the same questions. At this time, they get hard copies of the quizzes, 3 copies per team, and they had to discuss the question, read the question, come up with a consensus regarding the answer to each question, which requires for them to be able to, one, listen to somebody else's viewpoint or interpretation of a concept, and also being able to articulate their thoughts. Oh, one more thing that I want to share in this case is that once they get consensus of the answer to a question, they get to select their answer on this card. This is called, I guess it's known as the immediate feedback assessment technique card or the scratch-off card, and the students love it. They feel like it's a game for them. They're learning while having fun. So I think that the team-based learning has really made or easy for me to incorporate different ways and opportunities for them to express themselves. And they can still self-evaluate right there. Okay, am I understanding this? Or
do I need more help from the instructor, or do I need help from my peers?
All right, I think I saw is it someone had her hand up? Karen, right? Is it Karen?
Hi, hello. Sorry, that was by mistake because there was a problem with
okay.
internet. I was trying to solve that.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you a question now.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I did see that, so I was paying attention. All right. So that's one faculty's perspective of multiple means of action and expression. So the most important thing that you need to think about is that you are providing opportunities for the student and making the learning fun. Okay. All right. So just a few things. So since you all are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy verbs, in terms of assessment or the student showing you they understand, you want to begin with a measurable outcome, right? Define, describe. So based on the outcome. So like, let's say, for example, you are asking the student to explain a particular concept. Is it possible to give them options to explain the concept, right? Or if you are asking the student to criticize a particular, a particular concept or a particular topic, can you give them options, right? And sometimes it becomes a challenge where it's like, oh, that's an extra work that I need to do. I have to give them options. It sometimes also depends on how big the class is, right? Sometimes if it's a large class, it might not be a possibility to give them different options. But if it is a possibility, if you are able to do it, you definitely want to think through that. So begin with a learning outcome and align assessment to the learning outcome. So the learning goals, I think you mentioned that as learning goals. You want to make sure that you connect your assessment to the outcome. And so then you talk about the alignment, right? The alignment in a course or in a particular lesson is very important. So here's a quick example. We'll probably not, spend a lot of time in there, but definitely take a look at that later on. Other things you can also think about: providing spell checkers, providing grammar checkers, and translation. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was a student advocate for international students. And one student was, his first language was Arabic. And the way it works, you have to think about writing, and we're writing like comprehensive exam. So I advocated for the student to use translation in the classroom, Google Translate in the classroom, during the preliminary exam in school, because the student thinks in Arabic, right? So then write the Arabic down and then it translates for them. Is it giving the student undue advantage? I don't think so, because the student is still needing that support, and they are still reaching their goals and doing what they are supposed to do, right? So you want to provide text-to-speech software. I think this is coming up. Calculators, providing sentence starters, using stories, concept map to kind of help the students to express themselves in that way. Other things, so when you think about, so I probably would stop here. When you think about creating equitable assignments, right? You want to think through that it is transparent. So you are clear from the beginning, thorough from the beginning. If you can provide a rubric for them, it is important that you do that, so then the students know what to expect. There is the expectation at the beginning of the assignment or of the assessment they are working on. Think about a growth mindset, and I think I talked about that at the beginning. Build and scaffold from large assignment and start off with smaller assignment and build it up all the way. So like Mark was saying, if you have a big paper at the end, giving them the opportunity, lot of formative assessment to kind of build that all the way up. And then building flexibility. Is it possible to be able to give them flexible due dates? For me, in a semester, I have one assignment that I make it flexible for whenever the students want to submit it. The rest of it is structured. So I provide that for them so that it helps them to have some sort of autonomy to the teaching and learning process that we are all engaging in. Any questions so far? There's still a lot to chew on, but I'm going to give you all that information. It's pretty clear and simple and straightforward. Any questions before we head on out to the breakout room and reflect on multiple means of action and expression. So excellent point. I see, is it Eliza? Eliza, a paper proposal. What about a portfolio? So then that was also one thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of thinking about authentic assessment. So when you talk about authentic assessment, it's more of like an assessment that you give to your students that have that they are able to transfer their knowledge to the real world situation, right? So we use Portfolium. Portfolium is a platform that anyone can use. I encourage my students to create a portfolio, right? Which helps with reflection and helps to be able to transfer the knowledge in the classroom and transfer that into the real world or into and the reason I do that is that when I got on the job market after my PhD program, a lot of the institutions were looking for, a lot of the applications like, oh, do you have a portfolio? Show me samples of your work, the work you've done, right? And so that is part of the things that I do. So even though I would benefit in the classroom, I can also use it in the real working world situation. So having authentic assessment is also really important in thinking through that. All right. So we're going to pause again. It's 10:04. We're going to head on to the breakout room. Think about one thing that you are most excited to, to implement in terms of multiple means of action and expression. Write down, write down one strategy you are excited about to implement in terms of multiple means of action and expression. It doesn't mean that you're going to implement all of it right now, but just one of them. In the interest of time, we have 20 minutes. I can't believe it. So let's quickly dive into the last principle, and then hopefully we have about 5 minutes at the end to kind of share some of our thoughts. And then we'll wrap up our session for today. Thank you for hanging in with me. I know it's getting late on your end. So, all right. So who can tell me what the last principle is? All right, I'll tell you.
Multiple means of engagement, I
Hey,
think.
look at Siri. You've redeemed yourself.
Yeah, finally, the mistakes have been
Exactly.
undone.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk about multiple means of engagement. So let me get into my PowerPoint and then get started on that. So that the why of learning, right? So far we've talked about, my computer is getting slow. We've talked about multiple means of representation, which is the instructor, mostly on the instructor side, and presenting that content, multiple different ways that you can think through learner variability. We've talked about multiple means of action and expression. So after you present the content to your students, you've made it accessible, you've added all these really awesome stuff to it. Now the students get to show you they understand. But then before then, in between that, there is also the engagement component of it. What are the different ways or the purposeful ways that you can get your student motivated to do it? Because we know that if you are not motivated to do anything, you probably want to stay in bed, right? You will not be really fully ready to go, right? So in thinking about motivation, the will and the way, like if you are willing to go, if I really want to run this marathon, I'll be training, I'll be motivated to go. If I'm not, like one of my kids, I have to make him go outside. He would not. The others will just go and play outside all the time. He just wants to lie in the sofa and read his book. So I have to make him go. So he's not really motivated to do it. I just make him do it. So motivation is not static. It goes across all domains. It's something that is inherent, and you want to cultivate that inherent ability in the students to do that. So one, you want to welcome interests and identities, right? Thinking about your students, you want to make sure that the students are interested in the topic you are teaching them. I think that's like the major thing that you want to think about. You want to kind of help the students to understand that this content is how relevant it is for them, right? What is the value? What is in it for me? in some regards, right? How authentic is it? And why do I even need to study this, right? So then also connecting to the prior knowledge that we talked about in multiple means of representation bleeds into this, because if I know how relevant it is and I'm able to start off from a point where I'm comfortable with and I build onto a much more complex concept, then it's easy for me to really connect with the content. And you want to also nurture joy, right? Nurture some sort of energy, bring some energy into it. So badges, point system. Every time we call something gamification. I did create a Mentimeter, but because of time, it will be a little bit difficult to go through it for us to finish up with our session. So it's in there. You can kind of take a look at it. But nurturing the joy and the playfulness in the teaching and learning process and helping the students to really get into it. Even my graduate students, anytime I do some sort of game and I'm going to buy you, coffee or something like that, they are really motivated to do it. So I usually do one midterm review class and play a game. And then I do one review class at the end of the semester to help them kind of reflect and think through what we've studied. All right. Then sustaining the effort and persistence, right? You emphasize the goal and why it matters. And so then you sustain that, optimize the challenge, set the expectation from the beginning using flexible tools and support, foster collaboration. So you want to also vary the different types of collaboration. So like if a student is an introvert and a student is an extrovert, like I'm an extrovert, so I'm always, I'm a little animated. But some of my colleagues are not. So in a classroom, you find different type of student, right? So maybe a small group discussion and a large group discussion, they might not thrive in a large group. They might do really well in a small group discussion. So you want to create that for them, that environment, the fostering the belonging in that space. And also emotional capacity. So when you think about emotional capacity, you are thinking about social emotional learning, right? So it's not only about teaching the content, it's about what the students feel and how they can set themselves up to be successful, right? Develop the awareness of others, developing the empathy, thinking through some of the challenges they have. One thing that I do in class is that I do a check-in every day. I do teach online. So all two of my classes are taught online. Most of the faculty workshop I do in person, but I want to check in and kind of not be too serious at the beginning and kind of like, okay, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 5? How do you feel? And getting them started to get into it, to be motivated to get into the process. Promoting reflection, increasing awareness and how they can monitor their own progress, giving the students opportunity to be empathetic towards others, and think through all the processes that they have to really engage with as they go. And then, so just a quick summary. Oh, I did pretty well in this one. Just a quick summary. So provide the autonomy for students to be able to connect their interests and their strengths to their lived experiences to the content you are teaching them. Create that environment for them that the students will feel that they are accepted, they are valued in the process. I always say that everyone has something valuable to bring to the table, regardless of who you are, whether you have a disability or not, you have something valuable to bring to the table. And so once you have an open mind and you check your own biases, right? There is a TED talk called The Danger of a Single Story. And then that forms a basis of what, I don't know if anyone has watched it before. It's very powerful. I would encourage you to watch it. It's by a Nigerian actor. And I feel very connected to it because sometimes we have the danger of a single story where we are thinking about, okay, this person is that, or maybe people from Africa are like this, or people from Europe are like this, right? You cannot really put people in a box because there is a difference. Everybody have a different story. My lived experiences in Ghana would be somebody else's different lived experiences in Ghana, right? So you want to be cognizant of that and think through your own biases, right? To be able to connect with your students. So let's watch this short clip. I think we're doing pretty well. It's good.
So in the fall of 2015, I redesigned a victimology course that I implemented in spring 2016. And then fortunately, using that experience, I have done a race, class, and gender course for this fall of 2016. In a general sense, I always like to have a very student-oriented type of classroom. And so with implementing team-based learning using the UDL principles, I have really been very intentional with designing teams, making the class activities very focused on that team and group learning, having them prepare ahead of time so that they're able to really discuss the materials in the classroom. And then sometimes I like to spring fun activities on them that they're not expecting, that they have to figure out how to solve problems in their team. So for the multiple means of engagement, I've really tried to use the team-based learning as the focus of that approach, so that students develop this community orientation with their teams, and in a sense it makes them accountable to each other on a weekly basis, so that they know that when they're given an assignment, it's not only their grade, but when they come together as a team, if they weren't prepared for that class period, then they're letting down their teammates as well. So it really encourages participation, preparing themselves ahead of time, showing up to all class periods, and really recognizing that they have this group interest in the classroom.
So in that class, I have a lot of journaling. So, I'll ask them questions about relating what they're studying. So what they're studying in the history of rock music to music today or to ideas today. So, and this gets to broader cultural elements of this music. So I'll ask them to think about race issues in American history and how music relates to that.
That's excellent. Any reactions from this one, from the faculty's perspective on multiple means of engagement? So I think you guys are really far ahead of the game in terms of focusing on project-based learning, because I would say project-based learning really helped shape who I am, because I was able to tap into what I already knew. I had no idea what American education system was. I had no idea what the American legislation was. I would read it in the in the history book or online, but I related more to where I grew up. So then, because it was project-based learning, I was able to choose projects that was really meaningful to me, and because of that, I was more motivated and engaged to be able to do that. Yeah, so love the idea of journaling. Yeah, and Mark said I've created some digital tools for helping with different stages of assignment. That's excellent. It's great. Thank you. Yes, so hopefully that could help with intrinsic motivation, because like if I'm internally motivated to do it, then I want to show off what I already know, right? Because I lived for many, many years in Ghana before I came. So I always tell my kids, like, don't ask me about American history because I don't know. But if you ask me about Ghanaian legislation, oh, I can tell you all day because that's how I grew up. That's what I know, right? So just varying that. And I think that has shaped who I am as a professional, doing what I really love to do. So it is important to really think through that as you keep going. Okay, all right. I think one thing that I would love to show, I probably would skip through. Let me see. Okay. So 3 pillars so I'm going to leave you with these 3 pillars. So the 3 pillars of engagement: instructors who care about their students, instructors who make students excited about the learning, instructors who encourage their students to pursue their goals, right? So students will be more excited about learning if they know that they are supported, if the classroom environment is conducive for them, if they know that they know the goal and they know how important it is for them and they are excited about the learning process. And if they know that if the instructor give them the tools to be able to help them achieve their goal, that makes a huge difference. Did I share my screen? I did not share my screen. Okay. Here we go. All right. So those are the 3 pillars here. Caring for your student, making them excited about the learning, and helping them to pursue their own personal goal. This is one slide that I would like for you to kind of think through in terms of active learning. The more the students are actively engaged in the learning, the better they are able to learn. So this is research-based. So if you are only lecturing your students, they are only getting about 5% of what you are teaching them. So then when you keep going down, you see that the percentage is getting a little bigger and bigger, right? So you want to engage your student in the learning process. One of my favorite, and I have some strategies here. One of my favorite is 10-2 strategy. So 10-2 strategy is a strategy that when I teach for 10 minutes, I pause for 2 minutes, right? So you can see that I will ask you questions. I will ask you to put something in the chat. I'll ask you to do something, because what I'm doing is that I'm breaking down the monotony of me speaking and getting you engaged. So the more you are engaged in the learning, the better you are able to learn the content in an effective way. So you want to think through active learning strategy and incorporate some of those strategies into your learning. We are about 5 minutes, so we probably might not be able to go to the breakout room this time around, but I would like for us to share some of your thoughts from the breakout room. So 2 questions, I'm going to put that in the chat so that at least we can have some time to discuss that. So what is one UDL strategy you are most excited to implement? Again, 1, right? And then 2, what barriers can you envision and how do you plan to overcome them? So that's where the test comes in. Anyone wants to get started? You can use the raise hand feature, or you can also unmute. You can put it in the chat, whatever makes you comfortable to share.
My raise hand function doesn't work, but fortunately I still have a voice. But what I already thought about doing so I was considering that one, and now I'm almost 100% sure to do it, is offering for final assessment several ways how to do it. So either they can do a video, they can do a Pechakucha, for example, or they can have a written paper over there, because some people are better in writing, other ones are better in, well, being creative and having a video. So that is one of the things.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you. And for me, I was telling you that I give my students weekly reflection. Those who record videos and actually audios, I have the most authentic reflection, because they are not just copying from ChatGPT or any AI tool. They are actually really engaging, and so I get the best reflection from those who do the audio and video, really. So thanks for sharing that. 2 more. So Eliza says, already use check-ins, and I would like to increase intrinsic motivation and emotional intelligence in journaling. Excellent, thank you. So check-ins are a really great tool. So I'm glad you already do. And I think just journaling would be a good thing to incorporate, definitely. Thank you. 1 more. Mark is ready to go.
Yeah,
go,
some of the courses I teach on, they have videos as supplementary materials. Now they date from before I started the university, and I'd like to make them a bit more accessible. For example, some of them are quite long for an e-learning video. E-learning videos need to be quite short, like probably between 5 and 10 minutes. They need chunking. Whereas some of the videos that we have at the moment are like 30 minutes long, and they're going through multiple topics as well. And it's just a video, which means the students don't need to do anything. So like, for example, you could put a H5P quiz on top of the video and make sure that they answer questions at each stage. The other thing is some of the PowerPoints probably don't really follow accessibility rules. So there are too many colors, not enough contrast and so on. So I think for future video webinars or anything like that, I would like to make sure everyone in the faculty, everyone in my community, in my department, I'd like them to think about these accessibility issues for online videos, because we rely on them to a fair extent.
Right, excellent. Thanks, Mark. 100% again. And also, you know, closed captions, if you can, you know,
Closed
auto
captions,
caption,
yeah.
like YouTube can auto caption for you. And, you know, a lot of strategies, 10-2 strategy, accessibility checkers, using tools that, you know, students already know. And so thank you all so much. You all made this really engaging, and I really, I'm grateful. So here, just a quick closing thought here. So present your course in multiple ways. So presenting it in multiple ways is key to student success. Allow the student to engage with the content in various ways and tap into your learners' interests and challenges, right? And then so 3 things I want you to kind of focus on. Start small and take action, right? Measure and reflect on impact. Collaborate and seek support. So those are the 3 things that I want you to really focus on. But if you haven't heard anything today, starting small and focusing on establishing that small component of what you can incorporate in your course goes you know, in a huge way to engage your student and ensure that everyone has you know, so everyone is able to engage with the content in a very meaningful way. It's right at 10:30, so I don't want to really keep going, but I'm going to hang around if anyone has questions. Again, thank you again for taking your time and giving me your evening to engage with me. Here is my email if you have further questions. It would also be on the last slide on the PowerPoint as well. But yeah, have a great evening, and thank you again.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Eunice, for a very interesting 1.5 hours. It's amazing how much we discussed and how many thoughts and ideas we exchanged in 1.5 hours. So thank you for keeping the pressure on, keeping us engaged and keeping us motivated for this session. And as said, and as one of your final points, collaborate and seek support. So we at EdLab would love to collaborate further with all of you here and all other teaching staff, of course, and UM staff on incorporating more of these UDL principles in our teaching, learning, and research.